Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Coding and Philosophy podcast. I'm Juho.
And I am T. Anh.
T. Ein.
T. Anh, yeah.
Yes. And this episode, I thought we would start out by talking about, let's call them, well, I've discovered a new way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling Tri before, T. Ein. I'm just gonna keep calling you Tri because that's the name I'm comfortable with.
You just assign a variable to point to my identity.
Exactly.
And that variable to you is T.
Exactly. And it's not a constant. It's like you said, a variable.
All right. A constant can be variable, but please go ahead. What do you learn about the new things you can learn?
Well, I've been learning about the domain name system.
Domain name server.
Yeah, that's that thing. So the whole DNS, how it works. And it's a really complex thing. There's a lot of ins and outs on it. And
it's a Tower of Babel.
It's a Tower of Babel?
Babel.
Yeah.
It's so high that speaks so many different languages.
Yeah, it's abstracted. There's a lot of, if you learn about one thing, you also have to learn about the other things. And then when learning about those things, you have to, it like spreads out. But that's all technology for you in a way. But anyway, so let's say when I was learning coding and how to use React, my method was just YouTube tutorials, YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
I was building projects building a project
mm-hmm.
and needed to have some like WebSockets, for example. So I would just find YouTube videos about them
Mm-hmm.
and watch them and make my notes. I had like a big notebook. Well, now that I'm learning about DNS, I'm not using that method. What I'm using is I'm implementing utilizing Chatgpt
Mm-hmm.
by basically learning about the concept.
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing an essay about the DNS and how it works. I'm trying to explain it in the most simple way possible so that anyone can understand it because, well, that's the way I want it to be explained to me. I'm basically explaining to myself through that essay. But anyway, so to help me write that essay, I've been searching some articles on the internet, learning, let's say, a mental model of how it works,
Right.
then asking ChatGPT, this is the way I understood how the name servers work. Am I correct or not?
I see. I can imagine. Well, that's a good way to do that, to have a quick validation of your understanding. But by writing it out of how you understand it and then get feedback from ChatGPT, it's definitely a good way for learning.
Yeah. It's a whole new... I've realized the power you can have when you're learning new things. It's like ChatGPT can help out. I just love it. I use it, I feel, more each passing day because it can be used in anything. It's the new Google in my eyes. Yeah. So that's what I've been kind of doing this past week. And it's a great new tool of learning I discovered.
Do you see any improvement from the previous learning method, which was to watch video and then imitate the actions into your current project?
Well, I do say it takes away the time of finding the right video because it just matters. And now thinking about it, the more clearly you can define a problem, the more you understand, right, about the problem itself.
Right.
So it's really, I see it as a massive boost to my learning because I'm basically defining the problem
In the prompt.
yeah,
I can imagine.
and it's causing me to learn basically as I'm writing it out, and then I get a response which also teaches me something. So as opposed to the way I was learning on YouTube, where I would spend, in a way, when you're typing into the search bar a problem that you're having and looking for a specific video, that trying to find the specific video in a way is also you defining the problem more
Right.
clearly.
And when you search for the keyword in the search bar, it may not encapsulate accurately the problem that you have. It may just be a component or a snippet of the problem that you have.
That's true.
Not to mention that, take the specific context of YouTube, there will be title that inflates or trying to design the title so that it increases the chance this video is being clicked.
Yeah, well, in a way, but I think Google is really good at, because Google wants to give you exactly the type of content that you're looking for, and it's really good at that. So it's in Google's best interest to make the search more accurate, and they're learning to do it better each day, I would say.
The way I see from your previous learning method of watching video is that you can imitate the actions into practice. So that's a form of learning, an active learning where you act an understanding out. But perhaps the context is different because last time the problem was to code an applications. And now the problem has become to understand conceptually.
Well, I think it's the same, because an example, when I was trying to build an application, I wanted to initiate the connection from the server to the client. And at first I didn't know that even possible, but then I learned about WebSockets,
Right.
and then I needed to learn how to implement. Is there a library that, because I was using Node, or like Node Express, and basically JavaScript. So what library do I need to use for WebSockets in that? And then I found a library, and then I needed to find a video which makes an app which utilizes that specific library to learn how the configurations are done. So it's not like I'm not, it's not that, it's the same process of learning, where with the DNS, what I first tried to understand is, okay, what does the DNS register do? When I buy a domain name, what happens? And then, I asked Chatgpt, and it said, your domain is saved in a name server. Then I had to figure out what a name server is. And then I found out, okay, that's a place where all the domains are stored. And through that, you kind of, it's the same process.
The same process. It leads from here to here, and you build logical understanding one after the other.
And at first, a lot of the things, the way they work is magic. For example, the way I first learned how the DNS system works is that the first iteration of my learning, a browser sends a request for a specific domain, and then it's searched in a name server, and then that is returned back.
That's a response. Yes.
Yeah, but then
that's the abstraction. Okay, that's a good enough abstraction. One step down. What's the next understanding?
The next understanding is that, the request is sent from the browser to the internet service provider, and that internet service provider, sends that request, or sends that specific request to DNS resolver,
Mhm.
and that DNS resolver, well, it starts to look. Um, it sends a request to I think it's called a root name server, which contains all the there's like 13 in the world, I suppose, and then that name server, that root name server sends a request to one of the authoritative name servers, which is each country has their own like .fi or .br or .swe or these types.
All right.
So there has to be they are all managed. All the FI, for example, domains are managed by this one authoritative name server, and then under that there's these individual domain name registrars who, well, there's, let's say, thousands of name servers which say work under the authoritative name server. This is the way I've understood it so far. So it's a real my point is it started out from, there was a lot of magic that happened, a lot of unknowns, which I don't know how it actually happened, but as you research more, you start to it turns from blurry to a more clear image of what is happening.
You have delved deeper from the user interface into the technical implementation. And the technical implementation can get greater and greater in details if you are interested to go that deep into the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And
it will be a wonderland at the end of it.
Yeah. And one other tool or method I've been using besides Chatgpt is, well, I have a friend who he studied computers, or he has a computer science degree, and he has also written a bunch about the DNS system. So I sent him a message saying, hey, is this how it works? Basically doing the same thing that I was doing to Chatgpt, but having a real person respond back. So yeah, you use all the tools you have at your disposal, I suppose.
That's true. Well, as a serious learner, you utilize whatever tools you have for the learning and perhaps find the learning method that is suitable for you. Something I want to chip in with regards to the topic of knowledge acquisition is a different style that a learner can intake knowledge. As I have given one example, there is an active learning style when you are actively engaged in the activity. There is Socratic questioning, so it builds knowledge by thought-provoking questions, and you as a learner trying to provide answer towards those thought-provoking questions.
Okay.
And your approach, which is to have your understanding validated, it's also one method of it.
You mean validated? Like I was asked, is this how it works, basically?
And then there's a feedback to modify the knowledge structure in your head. Oh, if it's correct, then I'm holding the right mental model. Otherwise, if it's false, I abandon it and try to build a new one.
Yeah, I like the way you put it, because it definitely was I learned something, or I read something, and it produces thoughts in my head, a bunch of thoughts, and then, well, those thoughts lead to other thoughts, and then it's just the brain works in such a
That style, if I remember correctly, it's more like a system thinker. So it thinks in the big pictures and then trying to build a very broad visions on the thing, and also a more intuitive style. Intuitive means you learn by idea through concepts. And I believe you also a proponent of understanding with analogies.
Yeah.
To gain understanding from an existing, so you hold an understanding of a thing in your mental model, and you base on that to transfer the same mechanism in order to formulate an understanding of other things that is also, even though new, but bear some similarity with something from your current knowledge structure.
Yeah, and that's the
Analogy.
Yeah, analogy. And I love analogies. I think they're the best way for me to understand something. I need an analogy. And the phone book analogy is a good one when understanding the domain name system.
The server.
Yeah.
DNS.
DNS.
I just use a variable DNS.
Yeah, DNS.
DNS. We thereby assign DNS as domain name server for easier communication.
Let's make the that the thing is there's so many terms which mean the same thing in networking or in that whole DNS.
Yeah, not to mention the over ambitions to acronyms, to make an acronyms out of everything.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, but it's a human problem, I would say. But yeah, with that, I think we've reached the end of our episode. So, thank you, 3.
All right, I accept that's variable and that points to my identity.
Yes.
Thank you, Juho. It was a thought-provoking discussion.
Likewise. See you guys in the next episode.
And remember,
keep on coding
and philosophizing
and learning about things. Learning to learn.
Learning to learn. Ooh,